almost walked away the second I saw her. Not Rebecca. Her daughter. I need to confess something. When that little girl said, "Mom's sick, so I came instead," my first instinct wasn't kindness. It was fear. Because I don't do chaos. I do schedules, contracts, risk assessments, not 4-year-olds who take buses across Manhattan alone. She climbed into the seat across from me like this was completely normal. Pink dress, crooked pigtails, shoes too worn for a child that small, and she looked at me like I was important. My mommy didn't want you to think she didn't care. That sentence hit harder than it should have. You have to understand something about me. After my divorce, I promised myself I would never again get involved in someone else's emotional storm. My ex-wife loved the lifestyle, the penthouse, the cars, the name. She never really loved me, so when my assistant arranged this blind date with a single mom, I agreed. Cautiously, someone grounded, responsible, independent.
Safe.
But nothing about this felt safe. Emma stirred her hot chocolate and told me about her mom's fever like she was delivering a board report. And when she said, "Mommy smiled when she got your message," something inside me shifted. Because I hadn't made anyone smile in a long time. Not like that. Still, I was irritated, alarmed. A child traveling alone? What kind of judgment? And then she said it. Daddy left. Mommy cries at night. I just wanted her to be happy. I stopped judging. I started listening. In that moment, I realized this wasn't recklessness. It was love. Fierce, terrifying love. And when I sat in that back seat beside her on the way to her apartment, watching her tiny hands clutch that oversized backpack, I felt something unfamiliar. Responsibility, not obligation, not pressure. Something warmer, something dangerous. I didn't know it yet. But walking into that small third-floor apartment was going to change the direction of my life. And I wasn't prepared for the woman who opened that door. I wasn't prepared for how she looked at me. Not with gratitude, not with relief, with fear. When Rebecca opened that door and saw me standing behind her daughter, pale and shaking, her eyes flashed with pure panic. "Who are you? What are you doing with my child?" And in that second, I realized how this must look. A stranger, a wealthy stranger, in her doorway. With her 4-year-old, I stepped back immediately, gave her space. "Rebecca, I'm Nathaniel." Emma came to meet me. I brought her straight home. Her knees almost buckled. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just exhaustion, and I reached out on instinct to steady her. The moment my hand touched her arm, something shifted. She was burning with fever, but she still pulled away. "I'm fine." No, she wasn't, and the stubborn strength in her voice did something strange to my chest. Because I recognized it, that tone of someone who has learned to survive without help. Emma started crying, apologizing through hiccups. Rebecca gathered her close, scolding and kissing her at the same time. And I just stood there, watching a mother terrified out of her mind, but still choosing love over anger. I had been in boardrooms all week negotiating a merger worth millions. None of it felt as real as that small living room. When Rebecca swayed again, I didn't ask permission. "Sit down," I said quietly. She did, not because I'm commanding, but because she was too tired to argue. I found soup in her kitchen, sparse shelves, careful portions, nothing wasted. This wasn't poverty, it was precision. Every dollar stretched, every need prioritized. I brought her the bowl and she looked up at me like I had done something extraordinary. It was just soup. But the way she whispered, "You don't have to do this," told me she wasn't used to someone staying. That hit me harder than anything Emma had said. Because I knew that feeling. After my divorce, people stayed close to my money, not to me. And suddenly, sitting across from this feverish, stubborn, brave woman, I didn't want to leave, not out of obligation, but curiosity, because beneath the mess and the embarrassment in her eyes, there was strength. And I wanted to understand it. The problem was, getting involved meant stepping into a life that already had a center. And that center was a 4-year-old girl who had already decided she liked me. I should have left that night. That would have been the smart move. Drop Emma off. Make sure Rebecca was stable. Send flowers the next day. Keep it polite, controlled. Instead, I stayed. And that decision scared me more than anything Emma had done. Rebecca sat curled on the couch, pale but calmer. Emma tucked against her side like a tiny guardian. I watched them from the armchair and felt like I was standing outside something sacred. Family. Not perfect, not polished. Real. "Mr. Grant," Rebecca said softly, almost formal. "You really don't have to miss work because of us." Because of us. The words did something strange to me. "I'm not missing anything important," I replied. That wasn't entirely true. I had a conference call in 20 minutes. Investors waiting, numbers to approve. But suddenly, those things felt distant. Emma slid off the couch and walked over to me. She studied me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Are you scared?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. Of what? Of having a kid around. Rebecca looked horrified. "Emma!" But I didn't laugh it off, because the honest answer was yes, a little. "I'm not scared of you," I said carefully. "I just haven't been around kids much." Emma nodded seriously. "That's okay. You can learn." Rebecca's lips curved despite herself. And there it was. That smile. Soft, tired, but real. Something tightened in my chest. Attraction wasn't supposed to happen in sweatpants and fever and chaos. But it did. Not because she looked perfect. Because she was fighting to hold everything together and still worrying about how this looked to me. That humility. That quiet dignity. It pulled at me. "I'm embarrassed," she admitted suddenly. "This isn't how I wanted you to see my life." Her eyes searched mine. For judgment. For pity. I surprised myself with my answer. I'm glad I saw it. The room went quiet, and for the first time since I'd walked into that coffee shop, I wasn't thinking about risk. I was thinking about possibility, which was far more dangerous. I didn't expect to feel protective that quickly. That's the part that unsettled me. It wasn't dramatic. No lightning bolt. No cinematic music in the background. Just a quiet moment. Rebecca tried to stand again to clear the dishes, and I gently took the bowl from her hands. "Please," I said. "Let me?" She hesitated. Not because she didn't need help, because she wasn't used to accepting it. That hesitation told me more about her marriage than any story could. "I don't want you thinking I can't handle my life," she said, voice low. "I don't," I replied. "I think you've been handling it alone for too long." Her eyes lifted to mine, and there it was. That flicker, not romance, recognition, like she understood that I wasn't talking about soup anymore. Emma yawned dramatically and climbed back into her mother's lap. Rebecca instinctively brushed hair from her daughter's forehead, whispering something soft and reassuring. The tenderness in that gesture hit me harder than I expected. I had built companies, closed deals, signed contracts worth more than the building we were sitting in. But I had never built something like that. Trust, safety, unconditional love. And suddenly, I wasn't thinking about whether Rebecca would fit into my world. I was wondering if I deserved to step into hers. That thought scared me, because stepping in meant vulnerability. It meant Emma's hopeful blue eyes asking me questions I might not be ready to answer. "Why are you being so nice?" Rebecca asked quietly once Emma drifted half asleep. It wasn't accusatory. It was confused. I exhaled slowly. "Because someone should be." The word surprised even me. She studied my face like she was trying to decide if I was pretending. "I don't need saving," she said. "I know," I answered. "That's why I'm here." Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, heavy, charged, and in that silence I felt the shift. This wasn't just a blind date anymore. It was a choice, to step closer or protect myself. The problem was, I was already leaning in. I didn't realize how much I wanted her to say yes, until Emma asked the question for me. "Can he come back when you're not sick?" Rebecca froze. So did I, because suddenly this wasn't about kindness anymore. It was about intention. "Emma," Rebecca warned gently, but there was no real heat in it. Emma looked between us like this was the most logical solution in the world. "You two were supposed to have a date. We can just do it later." I should have laughed it off, kept things light. Instead, I heard myself say, "I'd like that." Rebecca's eyes snapped to mine, surprised, searching. "After today?" she asked quietly. There it was, the doubt. Not about whether she wanted to see me again. About whether I meant it. "I don't scare easily," I said. "And I don't run because things get inconvenient." That was partly a lie. I'd been running from emotional inconvenience for 2 years. But looking at her, I didn't want to. She studied me for a long moment, as if weighing risk versus hope. "I don't have much to offer," she said finally. "No fancy lifestyle. No flexibility. My daughter comes first, always." The honesty in that statement pulled something deep in my chest. "Good," I answered. "She should." A shift passed over her face. Subtle, softening. And that's when I felt it. Not attraction based on beauty, but admiration. For her boundaries. For her clarity. For the fact that she wasn't trying to impress me. Emma beamed like she had just closed a business deal. "See, I told you he wasn't mean." Rebecca rolled her eyes, but she was smiling, and I realized something uncomfortable. I wanted to be the kind of man that little girl believed I was. That desire felt heavier than any expectation I'd ever faced. Because proving myself to investors is easy. Proving myself to a child who just wants her mom happy? That's terrifying. As I stood to leave, Rebecca walked me to the door. "Thank you," she said softly. "Not just for today. for seeing us, and in that hallway inches apart I felt the first real spark. Not loud, not reckless, just quiet possibility, the dangerous kind. Emma had been quiet for almost 10 minutes. For a 4-year-old, that was unusual. I glanced over from the driver's seat. She was sitting in the back of the car, legs swinging slowly. Her forehead pressed against the window while the city lights slid across the glass. "Everything okay back there?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "Mommy looks tired all the time now." The words landed heavier than she probably understood. I kept my eyes on the road, but something inside my chest tightened. "Adults get tired," I said carefully. Emma shook her head. "No, this is different tired. Kids notice things adults pretend not to see." The hospital building came into view at the end of the street, glowing white against the dark sky. Emma sat up straighter. "Is this where the doctor fixes people?" "I hope so," I said. When we walked inside, the smell of antiseptic and quiet conversations filled the lobby. Emma clutched my hand again, tighter this time. She didn't look scared. She looked responsible, like a tiny person trying very hard to be brave. The receptionist recognized Rebecca's name and pointed us toward the elevator. "Third floor, room 317. Emma held my hand the whole way up. When the elevator doors opened, she suddenly stopped walking. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked up at me with those wide eyes. "Promise you won't leave?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. That seemed to be enough. We walked down the hallway together until we reached the room. Emma pushed the door open first. Rebecca was sitting up in the hospital bed, pale but awake. The moment she saw Emma, her eyes widened. "Emma!" Emma ran straight to her. "Mommy!" Rebecca wrapped her arms around her daughter so tightly it looked like she was afraid Emma might disappear. Then Rebecca looked over Emma's shoulder and saw me standing in the doorway. For a second, neither of us spoke. Her expression shifted from shock to embarrassment to something softer. "You'd have brought her?" she said quietly. "She showed up at my office," I replied. "Alone." Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. "I told her not to do that." Emma looked between us. "But you said you couldn't miss your important dinner." Rebecca sighed. "I meant your school dinner, sweetheart." Emma frowned. "Oh." I leaned against the doorframe. "For the record," I said, "I think the dinner she meant was with me." Rebecca's cheeks flushed slightly. "Right, that one." Emma looked confused again. "You two were going on a date?" Rebecca quickly shook her head. "It wasn't a date." Emma turned to me. "Was it a date?" I hesitated. Rebecca glared at me. Emma waited. Finally, I said, "It was supposed to be dinner." Emma thought about that for a moment. Then she nodded very seriously. "That's what dates are." Rebecca buried her face in her hands. "I'm being judged by a 4-year-old, she muttered. Emma climbed up onto the hospital bed beside her. "Mommy, the tall man bought me hot chocolate." Rebecca peeked through her fingers at me. "Of course he did. And he drove me here." Rebecca's expression changed. "Wait, you drove her?" "She took a bus halfway across Manhattan first," I said. Rebecca's eyes widened in horror. "Emma!" Emma shrugged. I wanted to help. The room fell quiet. Rebecca pulled her daughter closer and kissed the top of her head. "You're not supposed to solve adult problems, baby." Emma looked up at her. "But someone has to." That sentence hung in the room longer than it should have. Rebecca slowly looked back at me. For the first time since we met, there was no guarded wall in her eyes, just exhaustion and gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded once. Emma suddenly looked between us again. "So, are you still having dinner?" Rebecca laughed weakly. "I'm in a hospital bed, Emma." Emma shrugged again. "People eat in hospitals." I rubbed the back of my neck. "She's not wrong." Rebecca looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Well, technically, the night isn't over, and somehow, for the first time in years, the idea of dinner with a single mother and a stubborn 4-year-old didn't feel like chaos. It felt like the beginning of something I wasn't sure I deserved. But for the first time, I wanted to find out. I almost ruined it that night. Not with something dramatic, with something small, dangerously small. Dinner had shifted from polite to personal. We were past the surface, past the resumes and safe stories. She was laughing when I said it. "You don't have to struggle forever, you know." The second the words left my mouth, I saw it. Her posture changed, not defensive, withdrawn. "I'm not asking you to fix my life," she said calmly. "I didn't mean—" "I know what men with money think," she continued. "That stability can be offered like a solution." That stung, because I wasn't trying to buy her loyalty, but I also realized something uncomfortable. Part of me liked the idea of being needed. That's a dangerous ego. I'm sorry, I said honestly. That came out wrong. She studied my face, measuring. You can't rescue me, Nathaniel, she said softly. And if that's what you're looking for, I'm not it. There was no anger, just clarity, and suddenly I felt exposed. Because she was right. My entire world runs on solutions, problems, fixes. But she wasn't a problem. She was a woman rebuilding her dignity. I don't want to rescue you, I said quietly. I want to respect you. Silence. Heavy. Then her expression softened. That's different. And in that moment something shifted again. Not attraction. Trust. Fragile. Earned. We walked outside after dinner. The night air cool against the tension we'd just navigated. She wrapped her arms around herself instinctively. I offered my jacket. She hesitated, then accepted. That small acceptance felt bigger than the restaurant bill. We stood by the car a second too long.
Close.
Not touching. Her eyes searched mine like she was deciding something. I moved slowly, she said. So do I replied. Another truth. I didn't want fireworks. I wanted foundation. But as I drove her home, a new fear crept in. This wasn't casual anymore, and if I stepped deeper into her world, it wouldn't just be her heart at risk. It would be Emma's too. I didn't meet Emma again for 3 weeks. Not because I didn't want to, because Rebecca asked me to wait. I need to be sure, she said one night over the phone. She gets attached. That sentence stayed with me. She gets attached. It wasn't a warning. It was a boundary, and I respected it. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't stir something in me, because I was getting attached too. To the way Rebecca listened when I spoke. To the way she challenged me without fear. To the way she never once asked about my net worth. Our dates became steady, predictable in the best way. Coffee after her parent-teacher conferences. Late-night calls when she couldn't sleep. She told me about her students. The boy who hid food in his backpack. The girl who couldn't read but pretended she could. Her compassion wasn't performative. It was exhausting. And she still chose it. One night I admitted something I hadn't said out loud before. I don't know how to be around a child long-term. The words felt heavier than they should have. She didn't rush to reassure me. That's honest, she said. Emma doesn't need perfect. She needs consistent. Consistent. I build companies on consistency. But emotionally, that was new territory. You're afraid you'll disappoint her, Rebecca said gently. I looked at her, because she was right. I didn't grow up with stability, I admitted. My father was brilliant. And distant. I don't know what steady looks like. She reached across the table then, not dramatic, just her hand covering mine. Warm, certain. You learn, she said. If you want to. That touch wasn't passionate. It was grounding, and I realized something in that quiet restaurant. This wasn't about whether I liked her. I did. It was about whether I was willing to grow, to be something I'd never practiced. Because loving Rebecca meant eventually standing in front of Emma and not walking away. And for the first time in my life, that terrified me more than any business risk ever had. The second time I saw Emma, she ran into my arms. No hesitation, no testing, just trust, and that scared me more than rejection ever could. Mr. Nathan, she shouted, like I'd just returned from war instead of a 3-week pause her mother had carefully orchestrated. I caught her automatically. Instinct. Rebecca watched closely, not smiling, assessing. I understood why. This wasn't about charm. It was about consistency. We spent the afternoon at a small park near their apartment. Nothing extravagant. No hired drivers. No curated experiences. Just swings, sidewalk chalk, juice boxes. I sat on a metal bench that was slightly rusted and listened to. Emma explained the rules of a game she'd invented, and something shifted inside me. Not obligation. Belonging. Rebecca sat beside me while Emma chased pigeons. You didn't have to come to the park, she said quietly. I wanted to. She nodded, but I could feel the tension under her calm tone. You know she's already talking about you at school. That tightened my chest. Is that bad? It means she feels safe. Safe. That word felt like a responsibility I wasn't sure I deserved. I won't disappear, I said before I could stop myself. Rebecca turned to me sharply. That's not a promise you make lightly. I know. And I did, because I'd watched my own father emotionally disappear long before he physically did. I wouldn't repeat that pattern. Not with her, not with Emma. Later, as the sun dipped lower, Emma tugged my sleeve. Are you going to marry Mommy someday? Rebecca nearly choked on her water. Emma. But I didn't laugh it off this time, because the idea didn't feel absurd. It felt possible. I care about your mom a lot, I said carefully. But those decisions take time. Emma studied me, serious beyond her years. Just don't break her heart, she said. Simple, direct, devastating. And as I drove home that night, her words echoed in my head. Because the truth was, for the first time in years, mine was already at risk too. I knew I was going to ask her the moment Emma fell asleep on my shoulder. It wasn't planned. There was no grand strategy, just a quiet dinner marking. 1 year since the day a 4-year-old walked into my life and rearranged it. We were at a small restaurant Rebecca loved. Nothing extravagant, just warm lighting and familiar food. Emma had insisted on sitting between us. Halfway through dessert, her head grew heavy against me. And I didn't move. I let her sleep there. Because a year ago I was afraid of this exact weight. Now it felt right. Rebecca watched us, something soft in her eyes. "You're good at that," she whispered. "At what?" "Staying." That word hit deeper than she knew. After dinner, I asked Emma to wake up for just a minute. She blinked sleepily as I knelt down in front of her first. "Emma Walsh," I said gently, heart pounding harder than any boardroom presentation. "You took a bus across the city because you wanted your mom to be happy." She nodded proudly. "I'd like to ask your permission for something." Rebecca froze beside us. I looked Emma in the eyes. "I'd like to marry your mom someday, but only if you think I'm doing a good enough job." Emma gasped like I'd just offered her a puppy. "Yes," she whispered loudly, "but you have to promise not to move far away." "I promise," I said. Then I stood and turned to Rebecca. No dramatic music, no crowd watching, just the three of us. I didn't expect to fall in love, I told her honestly. I expected a polite dinner and maybe a second date. Her eyes filled. "But you and Emma taught me something." I didn't know. I was missing consistency, real love, the kind that isn't impressed by money. I took her hands. "I'm not here to rescue you. I'm here to build with you. If you'll let me." She didn't answer right away, and that pause nearly broke me. Then she whispered, "Yes." And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next.